you're starting out, you think that there's one thing that's going to change everything. And then I'll be on my way and I'll become a famous comedian, and it's more really overly simplified in your brain. Well, then of course, the further you go, the more complicated it becomes and nothing means what you thought it meant.
I'm Charla Lauriston, a stand-up comedian, writer, director, and producer, and this is the Working Writer Podcast, where screenwriters, creatives, and industry insiders share their stories of breaking in hopes that it helps you along your path. I'm so excited you could join us. If you like what you hear, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Without further ado, let's get to work. Welcome back to the Working Writer Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know there are a million other places you could be, so I really appreciate you spending the time with me here. Our guest today is Sara Schaefer. Sara is an Emmy Award-winning stand-up comedian, writer, and artist. She published her first book, Grand, in 2020 with Simon Schuster. She's written for numerous television programs, including Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor, Would I Lie to You, and The History of Swear Words on Netflix. In this episode, Sara and I go pretty deep. We talk about the emotional blowback of not going as far as you thought you would in your career, our feelings on the writer's strike, and much more. Before we jump into the episode, I wanted to let you know that I'll be doing a few live virtual courses at the Working Writer School in our upcoming Deep Dive series, where I'll go in depth on one specific topic. First up is our 2-day Good with Money deep dive, where I'll walk you through how to save, pay off debt, and build long-term financial stability as a creative. It's happening August 8th and 9th at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can also catch the Productivity for Creatives deep dive in September and the Building Confidence deep dive in October. This series is exclusive to members of the Working Writer School, which you can join now for just $49 a month. All right, those are all the updates I've got. Now, let's get to the episode. Sara Schaefer, so excited to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my God, I have so many things I want to talk to you about. Number one, I don't know if I said it to you in person, but congratulations. This is a little bit late on Grand. It's a fantastic book. It's beautifully written. I'm a fan of your writing, as I've told you before. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
So I usually start the podcast by asking just about your personal background. Where are you from? How did you grow up? Mm-hmm. Who are you?
Well, I grew up in Virginia, outside the city of Richmond in the 80s, in the early 90s were my time. And I've always wanted to be a writer of some kind. Probably my earliest dream was to write a book, which I ended up doing, which is crazy, but it ended up being, the dream became more specific later on. Well, I guess I went on a detour. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. I went to college at William and Mary in Virginia. And then I didn't know what I wanted to do when I graduated. And so long story short, I ended up, after like a detour, I ended up in New York wanting to pursue comedy. I thought I would perform comedy, like as a sketch performer, because I was in a sketch comedy group in college, but I wasn't really much of a writer of comedy. And I just didn't think I could write comedy for myself to perform. I felt like somebody else would write it and I would perform it. But then when I got to New York, I realized no one was going to write for me. I was going to have to do it myself. And eventually I had to figure out, that I guess I wanted to do stand-up because I knew I didn't need anybody to do that and I could do it myself, but I didn't know what to write. And the first solo stuff I wrote, because I took like improv classes and I was trying to do sketch with this girl from my college that fell apart. So I turned to try to do stand-up, but I didn't know how to tell a joke. So like I wrote a song about because I was working in an office and I wrote like a song about my cubicle. And that was like my first jokes were like musical comedy, which is crazy because that's not what I ended up sticking with. I've tried a million different things, but But that sort of led me down the path of being a stand-up. And then meanwhile, I was working a day job, and finally, like my first break away from the day job, I started, it sort of led to like me doing, I had like a little talk show in New York that I hosted, and on a stage, like, a theater show, or, well, it wasn't much of a theater, but it was, it was, like a live, it wasn't TV, a little talk show. And then, I was doing improv, I was doing stand-up, I was doing anything I could to get on stage. And then, my first break was I got this gig hosting like an online show, which at the time didn't exist, that like wasn't a thing, for AOL. And I like interviewed musicians and bands and stuff. And that job lasted for like a year, and it was crazy. It was like, I was on camera talent, and we like wrote little bits, and I did interviews. It was almost like I was an MTV VJ in a way, but it was for AOL.
I haven't heard the term AOL in a long time.
Yeah. And it was like it was when AOL was dying for sure. But, it was, they like put the video, like this was before they, YouTube really didn't start to be even on the map until like, I remember Lazy Sunday. Remember that video, from SNL? That was like one of the first.
No, not really.
What? Are you joking?
Not really.
So it was the Lonely Island.
Can you just tell me what it is? Yeah.
So Lazy Sunday was the first Lonely Island like hit on SNL. And it was like a rap song about like how Sunday is lazy, and like,
I'm sure I've heard it.
Yeah, it was like their first one, Andy Samberg, and it was like they uploaded it, or like who knows if they uploaded. I doubt they did. Somebody uploaded it to YouTube, and it went viral on YouTube. And that was like one of the first. That was like one of the first times I remember like YouTube being a thing, and so YouTube was just starting to come into the like mind when I was hosting this show for AOL. And this was like AOL had its own website for the show, and like nobody went to it. And it was just like kind of this thing that like I have videos of me like interviewing famous people, and it's like no one ever saw them. And it's this weird little archive that I have. But it got me out of my day job shortly, for a short time, until it got canceled. And then I had to go back to my day job for a little bit, which was just weird. But then I got hired, on Best Week Ever.
Nice.
That was a show on VH1, and I got hired as a blogger because their blog was like really popular. And that was like one of the first TV shows that had a website that went with it, which was a very weird new thing at the time. And like, cause this was pre-Twitter, and, Facebook was just starting to like be a thing that everyone had. MySpace was dying. Like it was just a very weird time. And because that job was so specific and new, it really helped me land the job at Jimmy Fallon, which my job there was to run all the social media and website and everything. And that show was very social media, website, digital experience forward. And from there, I broke into writing for TV, selling my own talk show. And like that just sort of like escalated everything, or accelerated everything in my career, having that experience. And since then, my talk show I had on MTV. And then since then I've been writing for TV mostly, and doing like stand up and touring, back and forth between those things. And, just like I'm finding out on the picket line, with many other writers, is that for a long time, I thought my career was going into the shitter, but it turns out this is something that it really wasn't me, that like everyone's career is like, as a TV writer, is like becoming unsustainable and impossible. So that's one of the positive outcomes of the strike, is realizing, oh, it's not me. They broke it.
Yeah. You're not alone. Absolutely. Right. Absolutely.
So that's like the very fast, like, how from A to B, or,
I appreciate it. That's amazing. And it actually brings me to my first question for you.
Yeah.
I'm, of course, following you on Threads, which is
yes.
all the hype now.
I'm loving Threads.
And you recently posted on Threads that your desire to do this career is dangling by a thread. You had written that you just read Burn It Down. Yeah. burn it down. And, I relate. I have felt similar in recent years. And when I talk to any performer friend, whether they're a writer or an actor, we all feel the same way. I have many friends who are series regulars who don't feel secure in their careers. So I'm just wondering, what do you think is the hardest part about being a writer or a comedian right now in general? And what is the hardest part for you personally?
I'm 20 years into doing comedy and 11, 12 years into writing for TV, or like being in the Writers Guild. And I think, on paper and on a good day, I feel, wow, I really have done it. Like my dreams have come true. And I feel that. I do feel that. I've achieved things that are rare. And that feels so incredible. If I could tell my younger self, my teenager self, my college age self, even myself when I first started in comedy, the things I've done, she wouldn't believe it. She would be like, holy shit, But I'm also very, very tired of the instability and the bullshit of how toxic this business is. And like that book, Burn It Down, which you referred to that I had mentioned I read, is a great read for anyone, but especially if you're in the business. But it's really outlines the ways in which Hollywood is toxic systemically. And I mean, it just was so true. Like every page, I was like, God, this is just so true. And she just lays it out in such a clear way. And she just specifics. I mean, there's some shit talking going on in this book. There's some juicy stuff in there.
Good. I just started it because you mentioned it, but I haven't finished it yet. So
yeah, and it covers every element and every way in which, because we've publicly focused a lot on like Me Too and harassment and discrimination and that kind of abuse, which she does go very much into that stuff. But she also just talks about assholes, like people just being abusive.
Yeah.
Of course, it disproportionately affects certain groups of people, but it's everyone is in this mess. And, she even touches on a lot of the things that are really relevant to the strike, which is like that, the business has become so profit oriented and corporate Wall Street type, chasing growth that it has fucked up to a degree that is like, now we're seeing this is why we're striking. And, that when the bottom line is to always grow, profit, of course, like certain things fester. And as a creative person, I'm kind of at a crossroads of like, how am I going to live and sustain my life and be the kind of creative person that I want to be? And I don't know the answer to that. And that's how I feel. And I saw a lot. And one more thing, the Lucas brothers posted this recently because there was that article last week about where a studio executive was quoted as saying that they wanted to basically starve us out, like, force us out, make us lose our homes.
Jeannie Yashere just posted about it on her Instagram. She did a whole rant.
I think I saw her today on the picket line. Anyway, if she's in LA, I think I saw her. And the Lucas brothers posted a thing, a quote, a screenshot of that quote. Everybody saw it. And it was so upsetting. And people are like, they're just trying to scare us. And I'm like, I don't know. Somebody said that though. Like, that's just, ugh. But anyway, Lucas brothers were like, how are we going to go back and work with these people?
That's exactly what I've been thinking.
I was just talking about this today.
I don't know how they walk this back. So I have so much to say because I'm just like, when I came into the business, I was so green and I was so like immigrant. Like I just, had always lived amongst cultures and populations of people that just get regular jobs. They're nurses, they're doctors, they're accountants, they're teachers. Like nobody goes and does what we're doing. And there were three things that really struck me about the industry. Number one was how corporate it was while having zero corporate structure within like the writer's room.
God.
Like there's just like no structure within
HR,
the career at all. No HR. There's nobody to call when somebody does some fucked up shit. Like you're on your own.
Growth.
No, like just no structure, no real clear ladder. Yet it is an incredibly corporate system. Like it is so money driven. It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing that I thought was so crazy was how insanely toxic it was. That if it had any real structure, all of this stuff would blow up in these in these people's faces.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of these are like crimes. It's like there's like employment laws that like bar people from doing some of the things you'll read about people doing, from like throwing a phone at an assistant's head and all these other things or whatever. This is assault. And then the third thing was how complicit every single person was in the industry, whether it's our reps, whether it's us, whether it's an executive who knows about some stuff going on in the room, our inability to actually speak up about it because of the fear that we'll be blacklisted, we're never going to work again. So you have all of this complicit acceptance of the toxicity and poor treatment of people. And I'm so glad to see the tide turning, because I'm just like, the only way that we're going to make this industry better is if we talk about what is bad about it.
Yeah.
And I know that not all of us can do that. You know, I certainly couldn't do it when I first started, you know, and I'm just like, thank God now I'm like at a place where I'm not shit scared of saying, hey, this is a really, really toxic industry. And it is that way because we're all scared of losing our jobs, and it cannot continue because it's completely unsustainable. It's batshit crazy. It's absolutely nuts the way that everything runs. So I kind of feel like the hardest parts about being a comedian, a writer, I don't know. I feel like they kind of have a chance. This moment is giving me hope. It's like, I feel like we kind of have a chance to make it an overall less like, you know, I just think it's just like such a rocky career, you know, even if you're doing really well, it's just super rocky.
Yeah. And also it's not just fear of like, being punished for speaking out, you know, like I'm glad you brought up like how are we all complicit. And when I was reading that book, and you know, I've thought about this long before that I read that book, but of just, you know, times where I was too afraid to do what I believe probably looking back was the right thing to do. But then at the same time, I also have pretty sure I've suffered consequences for being a little more outspoken. Nothing I can directly name or prove, you know, but just like, noticing, you know, I kept getting hired by this one person, and then there was an incident in the writer's room, and then I never got hired again by them. And it wasn't even anything, I didn't even really do anything. But I guess I just said the wrong thing, or, you know, it was just one of those things where my perception was like, what happened there? You know, was I a little bit too much of a feminist bitch? You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you just don't know. And, you know, or like your own choices that you make. So for instance, in stand-up comedy, I always point to one of the most recent issues, but it's been going on forever, which is like, so Chris D'Elia, like, you know, that demon. I
don't know him, and I don't know what he's done. So can you give me a short history?
So he's a full-blown pedophile.
Oh no.
He's had dozens and dozens of women come forward. He's almost had 2 rounds of canceling. So like round one, all these women came forward with screenshots of like,
oh my God,
things he said, and like lots of stories came out of him hooking up with, manipulating underage, you know, 17, 16-year-olds. And then all later, you know, just really bad behavior. And so he got canceled, quote unquote, canceled. He lost out on representation, I think. He got edited out of a movie And this was like right after he had played a role of this exact person on a show. Like he had played a role of a pedophile.
Oh, wow.
And people were like, it's literally him. And it's like, yeah.
Maybe he took it thinking, now they'll never know.
Right. Like play that. And who would take that role? You know,
Yeah.
whatever. So this comes out and, you know, people know, like, I find it interesting that like, the comedy community can be really fickle on who they decide we're going to trash publicly and who we're going to protect. I think Crystalia, I can freely say this now on a podcast because it's just so open about it, but like that he is someone who a lot of comedians didn't like already.
Okay.
Because they didn't like his comedy. And that's like just a fact.
Which is the biggest crime.
Like that's true. Mm-hmm. And so when all that stuff came forward, a lot of comedians just felt very free to like dunk on him and trash talk him. And, so, however, after that was over, he went back, you know, he came back. He's performing at the Improv. He's being booked on local shows in LA. And a lot of times unannounced. You know, like I have a friend who did a show and there was a drop-in guest and she showed up to the show and she's like, oh, who's the drop-in? And they were like, I can't tell you. And she's like, what do you mean you can't tell me? Like, I'm on the show. Just tell me who it is.
Yeah.
Like, and then in her mind, she goes, and then she said, it's Crystalia, isn't it? And she had to follow him. And like, you know, so it just, he's back on the scene in LA. And the reason I bring all this up, is because, you know, like he's at he's wherever he's performing. Now I personally, Sara Schaefer, am faced with the decision of like my principles of like, that pissed me off so much that certain places were still performing that I took note and was like, I am not going to perform there anymore. But that's a choice I made because I didn't really want to perform there anyway. You know what I mean? It's like, and I don't blame any comedian for like not being able to take a stand in certain situations because like, what are you supposed to do? Just sacrifice your own career?
Right.
No one cares about your little statement that you made by not,
they don't.
No one cares that I'm not performing at that club or that show. No one gives a shit. I don't have enough power for that to make an impact. And it would have to be everybody going, we are not performing here. We don't have a union. We don't have that kind of like power as a group. And there's just so many examples of comedians that get a pass for being, you know, by some pockets of the community or like the whole community. And it's just like, wait, we all know this guy is in trouble. And, you know, I'm rambling, but my point is like, it's really hard when the individual is faced with those choices, when the system is just set up to like completely like, you know, those people that continue to book like a known predator. It's like, but why? Because you think you can't find another comedian to sell tickets? Like there's thousands of us.
I don't know. I truly don't know why.
Yeah.
Part of me feels like it's like when white writers in rooms started saying, what did they start saying? There started to be this like real backlash, I felt like, in every room with like being woke, but that wasn't the word that they used. It was just like, I'm not PC. That's what they would say. Yeah. They would be like, I'm not PC. So that's what it makes me feel like there's these people that are taking a stand against like the PC police and booking these people.
They're taking a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not going to bow to the mob.
Yeah, I'm not someone who wants to like prosecute people in public, you know, in the court of public opinion. I don't think that's right to just completely wipe away somebody's livelihood just because somebody said something. But obviously women are historically dismissed and there's
no other way. Right.
Exactly. When there's no other way, it is just like, at the very least, there should be a period of time where things are reviewed amongst the community. And it's like, there should be some sort of process to decide if people get to continue to perform. Because to me, it makes the club a little bit liable if they are booking a known predator and then that person assaults somebody at the club or something. So I'm just like, I don't know. It has so much gray, but it does feel like yeah, it just feel like this knee-jerk reaction to the PC police.
Yeah, and I think there's people who feel, oh, it went too far. Oh, Me Too went too far with that one story. Or what if they come for me next? And it's like, well, did you do something?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I always ask about that. I'm just like, is this like a male thing? Like, and I don't want to like trash males at all. Because that's not the point.
No.
But it's just like the men that do speak up and say, the witch hunt kind of dudes that are like, am I next? It's just like, what are you saying?
Yeah, like, why would you think that? Like, what did you do?
You should be immune to any kind of scrutiny. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like these people want to be immune to any kind of scrutiny, which is not something that is allowed.
And it flattens the other side, which is, so it's all or nothing. Like,
right.
You think I'm so stupid. I don't know the difference between Bill Cosby and Louis C.K.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
Like, obviously they're not the same. Like, right, I understand what is the difference. Like, I know, and I'm not saying the quote unquote punishment is equal for those two things, but like the Louis C.K. thing, I mean, the book actually talks about Louis C.K.
Oh, wow.
And she also she spends a lot of time at the end of the book talking about what is a proper way back, what is a proper redemption, what is it.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite parts of the book because it's so spot on, which is like, like you said, like court of public opinion is not adequate, but neither is our justice system. And
100%.
So when it comes to healing with a community and with actual victims, it's like, I think she talks about why Louis C.K.'s quote unquote comeback was like dissatisfactory, and like, and she really breaks it down. And like, I think people are like, well, what is he supposed to do? And I'm like, well, not that, like I'm like, and I just think that there's work to be done in terms of like, like I understand like the difference between somebody who's like makes inappropriate jokes in a writer's room and just like doesn't know the boundaries and makes people uncomfortable and or offended or whatever, and them receiving proper training and like them taking accountability and moving forward. And then I would see I can forgive so much, like if I think somebody truly is changing and doing quote unquote doing the work and all that kind of thing, and I see that, I'm like, I want that. I want healing. Yeah. I want someone to be better. Obviously, if they're like, drugging women and like, like that's different. That's like, okay, maybe we need to use the system we have in place and put you in jail. But like,
right. For full-on criminals, you should go to jail. But there definitely is this piece that I feel like is missing, which is like this reconciliation piece. I don't want people to be blanket canceled if they do something even perceived as wrong. But at the same time, it would be like, we don't want to completely shut people out, but at the same time, there needs to be accountability. But so I wanted to, I feel like you're such a outspoken comedian, but I would never think of you as a political comedian. Do you consider yourself political in any way?
No, but I'm political,
or quote unquote political.
I mean, as a person, I'm political, but like I'm tapped in. I'm not like I wouldn't say I'm a full on activist in that way, but I keep tabs. I do the. I try. I'm more of a like when it comes to like politics in my community or whatever. I'm the type where I'm like, you just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'll be the body or the call in. I'll sign the thing and I'll, like that kind of thing. But in comedy, no, I wouldn't. I actually would not say I'm a political comedian. In that I don't get up on stage and talk about politics and laws and presidents and who's elected and things like that. However, I would say that my comedy is political in that I do not try to make comedy that appeals to all. And I in fact would prefer it's interesting. Like, it's not that I prefer, like, no, I don't want a bunch of QAnon people in my audience, because I'm just like, I don't think you like me. But I would say, like, I don't shy away from revealing that I am a full-blown lefty when I'm on stage. Like, I don't try to hide it. And that's something that, I never even thought I would have to do that. But I remember touring a lot in 2015 and 16 and doing a lot of colleges or random clubs and not being known. And in that time, the political atmosphere was so, like, Hillary versus Trump and that kind of thing. And, like, it was, like, toxic to even, in certain settings for me, it would be toxic to even hint of what side I was on, even though I'm like, it's obvious. Like, look at me. Like, it's obvious. Like, I'm using big words and like,
I know.
But when you're performing as just a sort of unknown comedian and random people of all stripes are coming to see you perform, it can get really tense really quickly.
Yeah.
If they think that you're their enemy. And so I've learned how to be a chameleon a little bit. I have material that can please any crowd, that I know I can do in front of any crowd. But I wouldn't say it's dumbed down. It's just topically on a safer topic, and that, made me a better comedian, being able to be a little more flexible.
Okay.
And that really is just for my own comfort, being able to be like, I just want to go out there and kill for an hour. I don't want to be pulling teeth trying to get everybody on my side. So I'll just do the stuff that I know works for everybody. But I have lots of material that is just, definitely going to offend a more right-wing audience. I usuly do like a test joke. Like, oh, if they liked that, then I can go further down that lane. And now my show, I'm doing a solo show now that is like really high concept, and it's not political, but it's I think people who are a little more progressive leaning and intelligent do tend to enjoy it more.
I did want to ask you about your show. So let's take a quick break. And when we come back, you can tell me about your show.
Okay.
I'm quickly interrupting this episode to tell you about theworkingwriter.com. It's a resource I created for screenwriters and creative entrepreneurs that includes a blog, a course, and this podcast. Right now, when you sign up for the mailing list, you'll get my Get Repped mini course for free. I cover what agents and managers do, how to know when you're ready for a rep, and how to find the right rep for you. If you're working on breaking into TV, I hope it gives you some concrete steps to get to the next level in your journey. Go to theworkingwriter.com, that's WERKING, and sign up for the mailing list now to download the Get Repped mini course for free. Are you a screenwriter who's feeling stuck or lost or just wanting to take your career to the next level? Then you need to check out the Working Writer School. The Working Writer School is an online course and community I created that trains screenwriters to become creative entrepreneurs who can confidently navigate building a professional network, attract managers and agents, manage their personal finances, pitch a TV show, and consistently produce original work they're proud of. When you join with one of our flexible membership options, you'll get the course, plus live monthly virtual workshops with writers from Portlandia, American Dad, The Last OG, and more. Go to theworkingwriter.com/school and sign up today to get training, mentorship, and support from a community of writers just like you. Now, back to the episode. So your show it's called Going Up, and it's about achieving comedy success.
Yes.
What was the expectation you had versus the reality about becoming a famous comedian?
Well, I think it's always changing. I think, when it was almost like, I feel like there was a time period where I would go, okay, if I just could get this one thing, if I could get a late night spot, if I could get into Montreal, if I could get, even just locally in New York, like if I could just get on this hot show, this weekly show that's popular, I'll make it. I'll be in. If I could just get an agent, when you're starting out, you think that there's one thing that's going to change everything.
Yeah.
And then I'll be on my way and I'll become a famous comedian, you know, and it's more really overly simplified in your brain. Well, then of course, the further you go, the more complicated it becomes and nothing means what you thought it meant. And, you know, my dream was to host a talk show and it actually came true, which at the time felt like destiny and it felt right. And it felt, I mean, I still was like, I can't believe this is happening. Is this real?
Yeah.
But it felt like earned and it felt, you know, like it all made sense, given the path and the choices I had made. But now looking back, I look at that moment, which is on paper a high point in my career, like in terms of like my credits and my IMDb and all those things. That's like probably the peak of my career at this point, as a comedian. And I look back and now I go, God, I was so lucky that happened. And it almost feels like an accident.
Wow.
Now that I know how hard it is, I know that I earned it. I know that I was worthy of it. But since then, I have not been able to replicate that. And that's been really, that has been one of the hardest things to mentally understand and process of like, oh, things don't just happen the way you want them to after, you know, and I thought, oh, I had a talk show. Well, now I'm on my way. It's going to keep going up, 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 up from there. And that's just not how it's happened. You know, I've done things that are to me huge achievements since then. Like major accomplishments that I don't dismiss at all. But in terms of money and profile and that kind of thing, I have not had, and power, I haven't had that since. And I've felt like for a long time I was chasing that high again. And it was just making me miserable trying to chase it. So I think the pandemic, and probably writing my book and like a couple other things all happening over the past few years has really made me like come to a place of acceptance of like, of knowing, you know what, it might be over. My career could be over at any moment, the way that I thought it would. And I need to start understanding and removing. I mean, I definitely was someone who had all my self-identity wrapped up in career. And I've let go of that, a lot of that, but there's still some lingering. It's one of the major questions of my solo show is, you know, should I quit? Or is it over for me? Or why keep doing this if it sucks so much? You know, if the business, like we talked about, why keep going? Why keep doing this? And so those questions are still unanswered fully for me, but I feel myself right now, just like, it's almost like when you're gripping something really tightly and you just start to relax the grip and you're like, I'm letting go.
Yeah.
Oh, it's scary. It's going to fly away. Right?
Yeah.
And that's how I feel.
Oh, wow.
I feel like I'm letting go of it and I'm scared. I'm really scared because I'm really at a crossroads in a lot of ways in my life. And I feel myself going, well, I don't know. Maybe I'll just stop. But then what am I going to do? I don't know. But I also could get a phone call the moment the strike is over for a job. And I'll be like, okay, I'm right back in. You know, like,
yeah.
100%.
100%. I think we're all like junkies. We're like adrenaline junkies.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Cause you know, like I said, you're not alone. Me and so many of my friends have had these exact same conversations and this same kind of feeling of free fall. And I'm so appreciative of your honesty, you know, and your openness to talk about it, because it was one of the things when I was really going through it. And of course it started during the pandemic or right before. I felt like for me, it started right before the pandemic. Just an absolute, like, is this worth it? Am I going down the right path? Like, am I able to sustain this? This is like a lot, you know? So I just felt like nobody talked about that part. No one would talk about it. Like, no one would talk about like that they're questioning their path. Nobody would talk about that. I don't know if I actually really like this, because that's part of the complicity of, us as writers and performers, of like, we are freaking miserable sometimes in some circumstances and situations, and we have to put a smile on our face, and we cannot talk openly to our peers about the stress, the unhappiness, the questioning.
That's what I actually realized. I lost the thread earlier of what I was going to say because I started talking about Crystalia. Is that there's not only the fear of speaking out and critiquing our business, but we also are in a business where if you don't project success and upward movement at all times, it seems like you're a failure, and failure is like a plague in this business. And openly saying, hey guys, I'm struggling, actually might harm your career. Because I've seen it in myself where like, I'll look at someone's social media and be like, ooh, they're not doing well. I guess they're out of the biz, like, I mean, I'm not consciously thinking that, but you do start to go, well, I'm not going to call on them to come and work for me, or, so it's like constantly reminding people I'm existing, I'm here, I'm performing, I'm still a comedian, I'm still a writer, and so that's exactly what you were saying is like, it's hard to admit any vulnerability, questioning or not liking it, and things aren't all rosy all the time. And I think, we get brutally rejected so much. I mean, and I'm talking things that would break a normal person happening once, but it happens to you several times a year. That I don't think many people understand the resiliency that's required.
And always with the thing you care the most about. It requires a tremendous amount of resilience. Yes.
Now it just doesn't even faze me. Yeah. Other than like, I'm so sick of this shit. I'm sick of it being dangled. Like, I'm sick of worrying or even thinking about it. Like, I had the biggest job of my career right in front of me. Like, right before the strike started, it was, I would never assume, but without giving away details, because it involves other people, but like, there were other people involved and they thought it was a for sure thing. And I was like, well, we do really have a good shot. The writing is on the wall. It's all they have to do is say yes. And that actually could be describing two things that happened this year right now. But at the very last second, it didn't go our way. And I was like, wow. Like, and the other people involved, like it's actually like legally fucked up that it didn't happen. Like, wait a minute. Wow. Like, why isn't this happening? Cause it should be, it's like their thing, like whatever. Again, I'm being vague. I'm sorry, but,
that's fine.
Because it also, it still might come back, like, and be like, hey, do you want this? Like, nothing's a done deal, but, it would have changed my life financially. It would have been the biggest job other than my talk show that I've ever gotten. And like, and again, earned, deserved, I'm worthy of it. I'm experienced for
Absolutely.
it. And the people that ended up getting it, the person that ended up getting it, also deserving and worthy. That's the thing, is like, it's not personal at the end of the day. And then but because it's not personal, it's so impersonal and so inhumane, the cruelty of it, how you're just tossed aside. And, that's happened to me several times a year for the past 20 years.
Yeah. It wears down on you.
Yeah. And, I used to go, well, God, I was in the running. Wow. I remember the first time I was in the running, like for real in the running, had a shot at being a Daily Show correspondent. And at the time I thought, I didn't think I was even in the orbit in the same galaxy. I just thought that I was auditioning just to get on the radar so that 10 years from now I would get a shot. And they were like, oh no, you were in our top 3. And I was like, what? And that blew my mind. I mean, that was like before I'd gotten any break. I was still at my law firm day job. And I thought, I'm that close And I mean, it made I walked on air. And I think it gave me the confidence to go for the AOL thing that I ended up getting, so I used to be like, where I'm like, wow, you almost got that thing. That's like an accomplishment in and of itself. Now I'm like, fuck this.
So if you're in that space, if you're in that headspace of fuck this, what has touring going up been like? Because you're literally going around the world with this show.
Yeah. It's weird because it's been really up and down on how well the show, because it is a hard show to do. It's demanding in every single way. And it's, I have to do so much. I have to put so much energy into it. First of all, the amount of work I've put into it is insane. And when people see the show, they go, holy shit, you brought it, and then the performance itself is really, really intense. The show has been up and down depending on the audience, and it takes so much energy, and it's logistically kind of more, it's not just me getting up and doing stand-up. There's like, a PowerPoint presentation, and there's props, and I have to bring all this shit with me everywhere. So when it doesn't go well, I'm like, God damn it. But I'm really proud of it. And I'm not, when people see it, they, especially where it is now, people are like, holy shit, that's so good. And I have this big European tour coming up. I'm ambivalent a little bit. I'm excited about the travel and the experience, but I am nervous about how the shows are going to go. And so I'm just looking at it as like, because I did the show for a month in Australia, and it was a real struggle, just for a lot of different reasons. But it got the show to a place that is, I never imagined it being as good as it. And when I came back, like the shows back home were so insanely good. And like,
what happened? What made the difference in Australia?
Well, when I got there, doing a month of shows anywhere far away is hard. And even in the best of circumstances, but like my tickets weren't selling that well. I got kind of a few not shitty, but meh reviews. They've like sent reviewers, and I didn't get the reviews I wanted. And the audiences were kind of like, and I wasn't there yet. I was doing a shorter version, and I was just like playing catch up, and all the flaws in the show became so like obvious, like glaring, and I felt like I had to fix it, and every single night I had to perform, and I wasn't like I didn't have the time to adjust fast enough, and I had to like hurry.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, I had broken a lot of things open mentally and creatively with it. And then I got home and worked really hard for the next week, and then had shows in LA, and those shows were so phenomenally good that I was like, I did it. I fucking fixed it, So I'm excited to do the show more. But I also just don't know what to expect in, like, say, Norway, or like, I don't know how they're going to feel about it. Although, and like tickets and like all that is like, it's stressful. But even I've looked at it as like, you know what? You're going to go on a trip to Europe, and maybe for 1 hour a night, it might get really hard. And then the rest of the time is just going to be a whirlwind travel experience. And my nephew is coming with me. My 18-year-old nephew is my roadie.
How adorable.
I know. I'm so excited.
Cute. So with all of this, like, with all of this going on, how do you actually, I wanted to ask, do you plan to record this special at all, like as a special?
Yes. So my hope is to go beyond just a special of it and make a film of it, because I have a concept, because the show is high concept. I have a concept for a film version of it. And because of the because of the strike, I am like not really actively pursuing that right now, because it's like, it's it's a gray area. And I'm not participating in like helping the pipeline along, but right. I am personally working on the film version of it, and then when the strike is over, I'm gonna pounce. And I'm
so excited.
My managers and stuff are like inviting people to see the show, but which is fine. There's nothing barring us from doing that kind of thing. I'm not inviting network people, but like producers and things like that. I think for them to come check out the show is not an issue. It's more like, I hope it's not. Maybe delete that part. I think it's fine. But, I can't stop someone from coming to the show, but
you can't. Yeah. You're not crossing a picket line by doing this at all.
No. I mean, I'm not having meetings about the movie version of it though. But anyway, so yes, I have a vision for that. I'm really excited about it. And I think that I just believe in this project so much. I'm like, I don't know what the future holds for me. I literally could be doing a different job a year from now. I have no idea, but I will continue to do this show for as long as it takes me. Like I will, because I've put so much into it. I'm like, I'm going to beat this thing into the ground until there's nothing left. And I don't know what that looks like after the European tour, but I'm just going to keep going with it. This was my husband and I were talking about. We were like, what do you imagine as like an ideal life, right now? Because that's changed a lot. Right now it's like, I told him, I knew immediately. I was like, we're cooking dinner. Music is playing. Maybe we have a screen porch. Maybe there's some woods and crickets around. And like, you're doing your creative project and I'm doing my creative projects, whatever those are. That sounds like the perfect life. And we are already sort of doing that, but we're just, we have very little control. It's way more chaotic than what I'm imagining.
Right.
What I would like it to be. So, cause like we have to move out of our current apartment. We have to, we don't know where the next paycheck is coming. Like those things I want those to be figured out so that I can enjoy more of the life that I'm in. But I'm trying to realize, well, this is the life I have right now. So try to,
Well, now I'm wondering first, how are you finding the energy for creativity when you're going through this sort of mental, I guess, acceptance process? And second, I want to ask, like, where have you gone to work through this stage of your life emotionally, mentally, where you're at with your career? Yeah.
Very good questions. One, the energy has been a real issue. Striking is so much energy being sucked out of me right now. And I'm a captain. And so I'm on the picket line 3 to 4 times a week. It is so hard and I'm barely able to do it. Like the people who are out there like every day, I'm like, where are you getting this from? Like, where are you? And, so that is a huge energy suck for me right now. But I also just realized, I'm not really feeling like myself and I don't know who that is anymore and feeling really like pulled down. So I talked to my doctor and I told you I went on, I was like, where am I getting the energy? Well, let's see. We got a little bit of this. It's speed. No, just kidding. I'm just taking a very low dose for the first time in my life. I'm taking SSRI, Alexa Pro, and I'm about 6 weeks in, which is when you're really supposed to start feeling the effects. And I can feel myself like I have more energy. I have less. I'm still dealing. It's what people told me. They're like, it's not going to solve everything, but it kind of just takes the edge off. But one of the main side effects, which I didn't realize, is I stopped biting my nails.
Yeah.
And I didn't try. I just looked down last week and went, wait a minute. Yeah. I've never had all 10 of my fingers with a full fingernail before.
It's amazing. So I saw that you had posted about that on Threads.
Yeah.
And I started taking SSRIs, I think 3 months ago. And this is the first time. Well, this is the second time I've taken them, but this is the first time that I've taken them for this much time. Like the first time I took it for like a week and I was like, I don't like this. And I didn't feel any effects of it. And I've been going through a similar thing that you've been going through, like emotionally. I've talked about it on the podcast before that I went through a really bad burnout at the end of 2019.
Yeah.
And I felt like it took me like 2+ years to really bounce back. And during the entire time, I would have never been like, oh, you're depressed. Like it would have never occurred to me that that's what was going on until I talked to I had found a new therapist, and then she told me, because I'd done so many things. I journal like crazy. I do my affirmations. I like exercise. I eat right. I do all the things that you're supposed to do to like, you know, help with your emotional imbalances, and nothing was working. And she was just like, you've done everything. Now it's time to get some help. And after that 6-week period, I did start to feel so much more energy. I did start to feel like, oh my God, like I have so much more mental bandwidth now, because before, like I had like zero mental bandwidth. Like I couldn't even answer your email. Like I'm just totally not able. And I also feel like now that my like nervous system feels so much more regulated, I'm so much more calm internally. Like I can't believe how much anxiety I was just living with on a day-to-day basis. I was just like, that's where I was. This is where I could have been at. Like I'm so much more like internally relaxed now. I'm just like, oh my God. It's been life-saving. I think it's been life-changing.
Yeah. I mean, I was really, I've never been on medication. I mean, everyone in my family, everyone around me, you know, like, and so I have no stigma attached to it now. You know, I'm sure I did when I was younger, because it was like, you know, the fucking 90s. It would be like, what? You know, but now, you know, but now it's just like, I had no judgment on other people, but I had just never thought I deserved it. Or I think I felt, oh, I've always been this way, where I go, well, my problems, they're not that serious. And the little voice in my head goes, you're being dramatic. You're being, other people have it so much worse than you, and you're being, and, you know, and so finally I called my doctor and I was like, I need to talk to you about this stuff. And she did the little assessment. She's like, well, you're scoring pretty high for anxiety and depression. And I was like, oh, and my therapist, you know, her method, you know, I never really asked her about it until I told her. I said, I'm going to ask my doctor. And she goes, okay, I think that's a good idea. It can really help. And so then she's been, you know, also talking to me about all this stuff. But to answer your second question, you know, my therapist is great. I've been with her for a long time. I really like her. And I have found that even as tired and not in the mood I am to go to the picket line, some days, not every day, because some days I don't really want to be social. That's part of why it's so hard for me to do the picketing, is because I'm like, I don't want to be around people. I just, you know, I'm not, you know, I don't want to be, because as a captain, you've got your, you know, little vest on and your hat, and people want to talk to you. They want to ask you questions. They want to chit chat. You're there to be like, you know, a beacon of information, or you know,
like an ambassador almost.
Keep the line going. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have to, you know, but some days I do get to be alone, and so that's fine. But anyway, I do find that, especially when I talk to other captains, I feel renewed and like, you know, a lot, not alone. Like, oh my God, like everyone else is like, wow, week 12, you know, like the actors are out there now and they're like, rah, rah, and we're like,
fresh energy.
Welcome. Yeah. Like, so that's good. And, you know, I have to say, like, my husband is, we're really, like, really in lockstep right now, in terms of like how we feel about, we're about to embark on like a little bit of an adventure where I mentioned we have to move out. We are going to put our stuff, we are doing it now. We're actually in the middle of putting our stuff in storage, and we're just going to sort of wander for a while.
I love that. I'm so happy for you.
We're very fortunate to have friends and family like all over the country, and we can, stay with people for longer than just like a few nights, you know, and
I love that.
And we're just gonna travel and just sort of like get out of this mindset and figure out what's next. Well, do we want to live in LA still? Do we want to, you know, we don't want to give up on, you know, our creative goals and dreams at this point, but like, it is like, we're going to take a minute. We're going to actually, like, before we run out of money, you know, it's like, we've had a rough couple years financially, like, because everyone has, I'm now realizing, and, you know, we're okay. But I'm like, I don't know, why would we sign up for a year-long lease in one of the most expensive cities in the country?
Seriously.
When we just don't know even what do we want, you know, let's just go and explore and take this time to spend time with our family and friends. And like, you know, I feel like it's a privilege that we get to do this. Some people don't have people to help them in times of like instability like this. And I think at first I felt very distressed and thought this was a failure moment in my life. And there are, you know, times where I go, well, this fucking sucks. Like that I'm not, you know, that comment about we're going to get the writers out of house and home.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I know. Yeah. It's happening already.
Yeah, it's happening.
But I don't view it that way. You know, it's not like we've been evicted or something and can't pay our rent.
No,
we
it's
actually
not
have
that
to
way.
move because of the property is, you know, being renovated and sold and whatever.
Okay. Oh, okay. And you just decided not to look for a new lease.
Yes, we just decided.
Makes a lot of sense. It's not there's no real point in being in LA right now. Right.
And like the strike hopefully will end in the fall, but we don't know, you know, or end tomorrow, honestly. I'm being realistic.
Right.
Like what, you know, but, you know, it's going to take a minute after it's over for things to get rolling again. And, I just don't know what jobs I may or may not get. And, I could have been doing this exact career from another city, this whole time.
You know, I live in Vancouver, right?
Yeah, I do.
And it's one of the best decisions I could have made.
And you're working.
I've continued to work. I mean, I did have to come to LA for like 6 months, which was fine. Yeah. But that's fine. I'll come to LA for 6 months. But I was going to ask you, I'm so glad to hear that you're doing this, because I was going to, like, while you were talking about where you are mentally with your career, it sounded like you need a good break. And I wanted to know if you've taken one before this. Is this going to be the first break that you're really taking?
I don't know what kind of, I've taken different kinds of breaks, and this is a different kind of break too. When I was in New York hustling my way up, you know, I remember thinking, even taking a week off of stand-up, and I would be forgotten, you know, it'd be over. And I saw a lot of people, when the pandemic hit, acting as if, you know, taking some time off stand-up would destroy everything they built.
Yeah.
By that point, I knew that's not how it is. You can take a year off stand-up and no one will even know or care.
Nobody noticed,
No one knows. They're like, oh, hey, you know, like they see you.
I took like 3 years off.
Which they don't know.
I definitely think
shit.
Put a big dent. No, I think it put a big dent, but I definitely think if I had taken like 1 year, it wouldn't have mattered. Yeah.
Now there are dents in terms of like progress that you don't make because you're not doing it, you know?
Yes, exactly.
But in terms of people's perception of you, I don't think it's as extreme as I used to think. And I think, you know, Scott and I, we're not like, we don't want to, we were talking about, we're like, we're not going to tell people we don't live in LA. Like, cause I think you don't want, like we were talking, but at the same time, I'm not hiding that we're going and traveling for a little bit, but like, I think it doesn't really matter. I think it's just, you know, I'm not going to put it on Twitter like, I'm out, you know, like,
right.
Because, you know, what if someone calls you and you're like, sure, I'll fly to LA for that. Like, I don't care, you know? But, I've taken different types of breaks from different parts of the career before, and it's always fine. It's always worth it. And I think, especially after the pandemic, we've all realized, like, you don't lose who you are. You don't lose your voice, your everything you've built before, stand up in particular. I do think like you're at the top of your game when you've really been working on it.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, hey, just go over the jokes like before you go on stage. You'll be fine. Like you'll
be fine.
You'll remember how to do it. Like you'll get there. You know, you might be rusty. You'll be rusty for like 5
the
minutes,
first few shows. Exactly. You'll be rusty probably the first few shows, and then after that, you'll be fine.
But it's not the same as like people compare it to like muscles or like working out. I'm like, no, this is not that level. Like with muscles, like, if you haven't worked out in a year, you can't lift 100 pounds. If that's what physically you can't do certain things without working out to a certain point. With stand up, I'm like, it's a few shows, maybe even one, and you're back. Like you're fine. It's like, you'll be okay.
You'll be fine.
I'm
really glad you're taking a break.
Yeah, I think, I don't even know what I'll be doing. I might, it's like,
I'm glad.
I might get up and do stand up in every town we go to, or I might just go, fuck it. I'm not doing any of that. I might write a script. I might do this or that. I don't care. I'm just like going to take it as it comes.
How long is this break going to be?
Right now. And of course, like I said, strike ends, I get a job, everything could change, whatever. If it was a job that I had to move back for, but, right now we've got plans all the way through the end of this year.
Oh, even while you're touring? Because you're touring through the end of the year, right?
Yeah, we're out of this apartment as of like next weekend. And then, we're, staying with some friends, and then I'm going to Europe. And that was part of the decision-making, was like, oh, I'm going to be gone. Scott I wanted him to come to Europe, but it just ended up logistically and financially better for him to not do that. Anyway, he's going to go see family, so we're in LA through mid-August, and then we'll just kind of, be out and about, and we'll come back if we need to. We have like a little mailbox here, and our stuff will be in storage. It's crazy. I don't know if you've ever put everything you have in storage.
No, I've never done that before.
I've had a storage unit before, but it was like in New York where we had not enough room for our stuff, and we had to put surplus things in a tiny little storage unit. We got a storage unit, and it's like 10 by 11 feet, which is one of the bigger ones in this place. And we're looking at it. We're like, can you envision all of our stuff in here? And we're just like, there's no way. And we're just like going to see if it all fits in this little cube.
So you're going to go figure it out now.
Yeah, we don't have that much furniture, so that helps the situation, but we have a lot of stuff. Like, we're just stuffed people. So we'll see what if it all fits. I'm taking pictures of the progress, like, as it starts to fill up.
It. You know what I think is interesting? The entire time that you've been talking about this, you're like talking about it in terms of like, well, I'm a comic and I'm going to be taking a break. Like, what does this mean? Yeah. But like, I kind of feel like, even our picketing, our strike right now, I feel like this is across the economy. Like, I feel like this is across industries. It is across class. It is across, I mean, not across all classes, but like, it is just like everybody is rethinking. Everybody, I think, obviously I'm not a social scientist, but it's clear that a lot of us are really stressed out from hustle culture. A lot of us are really burned out, and we're questioning why we got our validation or our purpose from this thing in the first place. Yeah. Now that it has shown itself to be, or proven itself to be, not worthy of.
Well, and it's like creativity is not growth, like financial growth, like growthism, like everything must always get bigger and
capitalism.
Better. And capitalism. Yeah. Yes. And that is not art. And that's sometimes those, a lot of time, most of the time, those things are not in alignment. And I've always said that. I've been like, when people, before I would ask, when someone asked me for advice in the career, I'd be like, well, you've got your money making lane and you've got your creativity lane and your passion lane. And sometimes those align, but a lot of times they don't. And so you just need to make sure that you know how you're going to make money, but then also be able to, because the creativity in the art lane is where you thrive. And that actually might end up being where you make the most money, because that's what people are going to respond to the most, is the stuff that's really coming from the core of who you are. And, Scott and I we saw this TikTok, and it was just a guy, and I don't know who he is. He was just like, capitalism has taught us that we are chasing achievement at all times. You are trying to achieve things in your life. But in reality, and this is his opinion, but he's like, we're here on this earth to experience life. That's our only purpose. And he was like, the moment you start pursuing experiences, like, you're free. That was his, like, I'm paraphrasing. He was much more eloquent than me, but, and he's like, and you stop focusing on achieving. He's like, imagine all you could achieve if you just chased experience, and Scott and I, we're like, that's what we should do for the next 6 months, is just be out and about and explore. And like, if we're driving from Arizona to Texas, like, what's in between the two that we have never seen before? And go and see that, and do things and be free. And not having rent to pay makes that possible. And just sort of removing that stress. And then if we live somewhere else that's way cheaper, we could maybe continue this for a little longer. And like, I just want a big craft room and to make miniatures and then write something if I have an idea, and like, just be living that life.
I love it so much. I actually, I only see positivity in this change that you're going through. I really appreciate you being open and talking about it. Like, because it sounds like where you were before, even though you were chasing and you were focused on that, it doesn't sound like you were particularly happy. So
no, I mean, there were moments, of great happiness over the past 10 years. But mentally, I've just been through a lot, and then, overcome a lot. And it's like, now I'm like kind of on the other side of a lot of different things I've processed and dealt with, and taking medication now. I'm thinking maybe I've given myself like just the boost I need to actually get to that, place.
I'm glad.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you're doing something similar.
Thank you. You've written in the past about like getting a divorce, and that experience made you question if you were a good or bad person. And now that you've had your experience these last few years with, like going through like, the realization that you're not where you want to be, and like how to accept that and things. What have you learned about yourself? Like, what is the most important thing you think you've learned about yourself at this point?
Ooh. Well, the good and bad thing, I was just thinking about that the other day. That's funny that you brought that up, is like that, because that was a really big theme in my book and in my therapy for many years, of like, am I a good person or am I a bad person? And realizing that's an unanswerable question, because there's no such thing as all good or all bad. And it's a black and white thinking that I've really, really worked hard to undo. And I really think I have. I really have exercised that demon. I've changed the way that I see the world. But I think one of the biggest parts of growth I've done over the past few years has been boundaries, and learning how to have them, and, without revealing, private stuff, but like, just stuff with relationships in my life where I realized I needed boundaries. And then but the fear I had was that I was abandoning the person. When in reality, I was actually doing what we both needed. And it was the biggest act of love for someone, is to have a boundary and go, like, I love you no matter what, but like, you can't treat me that way, or, whatever the situation is. So that has been a really big place that I've come to. But what was the question about the biggest lesson I've learned about myself?
What's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think is that I'm going to be okay, and that maybe I really am getting to the place where I don't care as much about people's perceptions of me, which I think is everyone, a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people struggle with that. And I'm not a subscriber to, you shouldn't care what anyone thinks of you. Because I think that is sometimes something I've heard people say, like, I love that person. She doesn't give a shit about what anyone thinks of her. And I'm like, well, because she's a huge fucking asshole. She doesn't think about other people. It's not that she, or he or whoever it is. But I think, but also that I have the capacity to do really big, complex, creative projects that I think I used to tell myself I couldn't do. And my book was probably the first thing that I really overcame a lot of that self-doubt to go, you can do something really big and really hard.
Huge accomplishment.
Years of work on one project.
Beautifully written. It reads a lot like Wild from Cheryl Strayed. Was that a big influence?
Thank you. I purposely didn't. I've seen the movie, but I purposely didn't read the book because I was afraid I would somehow cop the style too much. But I know that there's a similar, you're in wilderness and then you're in the life and memories and things, But writing that book was probably my life's biggest achievement creatively, and also healing, incredibly healing. Shit that I used to hang up because I opened myself up and showed people in the world parts of myself that I've always kept hidden. Even being a stand-up and podcasting and saying describing my fucking vagina to people, being what I thought was so open. I shared parts of myself that I thought I would never talk about ever in public, and to put it out on a page, and to also talk to my family about what I was going to write and the experience of going through that with them, and them giving me the blessing, and them enjoying the book, me talking to them about memories, telling our story, and the sort of trust they gave me. That just was a real special thing to have. And I really, when they read the book and they liked it, because I let them read it first, and they all loved it. And I've never felt more relief in my life than that day.
Was it that you thought you couldn't do it?
Yeah, of course. But also that I would somehow hurt them. And bring shame, or anger them or upset them. And they all loved it. And I've never felt so free, And I mean, it was hard. I mean, at one point I remember crying to my brother because he was like, this is a lot. He's like, I've never told people some of the things that you're sharing in this book. And, we talked it through. And then at one point I remember crying to him, and I was just frustrated. I was like, I don't know why I'm like this, but I have to tell stories. I have to. That's how it feels. I'll die if I don't. And it's hard to admit that to people that don't understand what we do for a living. That feeling of, I will die if I don't get up on stage and tell vagina jokes. I'll die. No, but to tell stories, and that was just such a profound experience. that now I can do this solo show that is so ambitious and and it's very personal and scary, to get there mentally and to not give up and to keep going and go, cause that was with the book, I wrote pretty much 3 books because I had to redo it. I had to redo it completely, almost completely 2 times.
Oh my God.
And that was so brutal. And to go, and then to see where it ended up and go, wow,
it's excellent. It's beautiful.
Look how far you can go. So that is something that I think I've learned about myself is I'm capable of way more than I imagine when I first start something. And I tell myself, no, you can't do that.
Absolutely.
But also to know my limitations is also healthy as well.
Right. This has been such a wonderful conversation. I feel like I could talk to you forever, but I promised you it would be a certain amount of time. So a final thing is just since you're 20 years in the game, you're a veteran at this point, what do you have to offer to all of us who might be in the position that you were in, I guess a few months ago, or throughout this time? Yeah. What do you have to offer, knowing everything that you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think, one, we cannot give up on this particular fight with the strike but the bigger fight that we've been talking about of just know more of this. What can we do differently and reimagining, society itself. I mean, I think we're in the beginnings of that. We might not even live to see, where this all what we're starting now, we don't know, but, to not give up, I think we cannot back down. It's too important. It affects too many other people. We've come too far.
Absolutely.
And I say this as someone who really wants to give up a lot. It's let's just forget it.
Writers are the laziest people. It's look at how determined we are.
Yeah. And then, and just career stuff, I've been through a lot of dark places mentally with my career. And with my creative endeavors. And I think, one thing is that story you want to tell, that idea you have, do not let go of it. And just keep doing it in any way you can, even if only 10 people see it, it's worth it, and to me, it's worth it, because
I love that.
If you've seen that show, Station 11, oh my God, it's so good.
Okay.
It's like you have to get through the first episode where you're like, oh my God, I can't deal with this post-apocalyptic virus. But it's really about what happens 20 years later. So you got to hang on. But I think one of the themes of that show is that no matter what, storytelling persists. And we as people love to share stories and entertain each other and bring ideas to life and imagination to life.
It's very much a part of being human, I think.
Yes. And so no matter what these fuckers and what, the rejection you have, you still have the ability to tell your stories.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sara, for coming on the show.
Thank you
You're
so
an
much,
absolute
Sara.
class act. You're such a huge inspiration. I miss you too. Thank you so much, Sara Schaefer.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful to Sara for sharing her experience with us here on the pod. Her memoir, Grand, is available wherever books are sold. A link will be down in the description. It's beautifully written and most certainly worth a read. That's all for now. Until next time, get out there, get to work. There's no way I could do this podcast alone. I wanted to give a big shout out and thank you to our editor, Justin Asher, and to our other production assistants, Jemima Lariston, Maya Racole, and Nicole Edwards.